Hello, you're watching the Crypto Roundup on Proactive. Billy Farrington joining with all the latest developments in the crypto space, not least of all this week's US election. Billy, great to speak with you. How did Bitcoin react to the Trump victory?
Hello, Stephen. Always a pleasure. Well, resoundingly well, to be honest, Stephen. So we actually saw one of the best single day rallies in weeks on Tuesday following that. I was going to say surprise victory, but personally, I wasn't too surprised. But anyway, that's another story, isn't it? Bitcoin reacted very positively. It rallied about 9% on the day, one of the best single day rallies in weeks. And some incremental gains followed on Thursday and today, but the markets did cool down a little bit. But the rally was so good that Bitcoin hit a fresh new all time high of around $76,900 almost immediately following the election victory. So, yeah, as you can imagine, the markets were extremely buoyant following that. Right now, we're looking at Bitcoin at around the Bitcoin dollar pair at around $76,351. So, yeah, it has come off those all time highs a little bit. But we're looking at about 8.5% higher week on week. So, yeah, a resoundingly good week for the Bitcoin markets. I will say that numerous tea leaf readers that I've talked to over the year have predicted $100,000 on Bitcoin by the end of the year. Right now, that's not looking particularly unreasonable. Obviously, that's up for the individual to decide, but it all depends on what comes next. To be honest.
Billy, what are the Bitcoin specific stakes of a Trump administration?
Yeah. So based on what Trump has pledged, that's what he's pledged, not what necessarily what he's going to do. He's promised a very sort of soft touch approach to Bitcoin regulation. He positioned himself as the pro crypto candidate. He really tried to court that crypto vote. He's vowed to create a Bitcoin and crypto presidential advisory council. He's promised, verbatim quote here, to make rules written by people who love your industry, not hate your industry. He said on record, if crypto is going to define the future, I want it to be mined, minted, and made in the USA. All at face value, pretty optimistic things for the crypto industry. And then there's obviously the case of Gary Gensler, the chair of the U.S. Securities and Exchange Commission, the financial regulator of the U.S. He begrudged, Gensler, if you recall, earlier this year, he begrudgingly approved spot Bitcoin ETFs and even Ethereum ETFs earlier this year, but he does remain very much of a crypto skeptic, and the crypto community is sort of they consider themselves working against Gensler, against the main regulator of this still relatively unregulated sector, as opposed to with him. Trump has promised to fire Gensler on day one. So you can imagine like the crypto bulls, the crypto diehards, sort of championing at the bit at that one. Put together all these things, and at face value, it does seem very optimistic for the crypto markets. But we've all said in the past, it really depends what if Trump actually does these things that he said he does, or if that was just some pre-election hype to court the vote. You decide on on the likelihood of that.
Billy, does Trump have the power to fire Gary Gensler?
Yeah, it seems to be a bit of a gray area upon my research. One thing for sure is he'll be facing intense pressure and intense animosity if he decides to try to retain his position. From what I gather, he can't actually fire Gensler as a commissioner, but he can appoint somebody else as the commission's chair. So he can't fire him from the SEC, but from what I understand, Trump can appoint somebody else in due process as chair. That means Gensler could, if he decides to stay within the SEC, albeit as not the chair. That means he'll still have some influence. He'll still be able to propose regulations and enforcement actions, etc. But he will have a reduced influence. But there's also the prospect that he'll just, to avoid humiliation and to avoid inevitable animosity, he might decide to rescind his position before Trump takes over in January, to sort of avoid some potential humiliation. And who knows, we could see some sort of scorched earth approach over the coming months. If he decides to leave, he might sort of try and rush through some tougher enforcement actions, some tougher regulatory enforcements before he inevitably goes.
Well, hopefully Gensler also went long on Bitcoin before all this occurred.
Yeah.
Billy, thanks as always for your insights. Have a great weekend. We'll see you next time.
Have a good one. Bye.
That's Proactive's Billy Farrington.